Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin in Southern Africa, where there are new signs of a crackdown on Zimbabwean officials loyal to former President Robert Mugabe. Two ex-cabinet ministers are out on bail after being charged with corruption. Lawyers for former Foreign Minister Walter Mzembe and ex-Energy Minister Samuel Undenge say their clients were charged with criminal abuse of office. Both Mzembe and Undenge deny any wrongdoing. Undenge is reportedly being accused of issuing a $12,000 contract without due tender to a company that did not work. Mzembe and Undenge were both granted bail at the weekend, asked to surrender their passports and remanded until January the 22nd, when their cases will be heard. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe's Anti-Corruption Commission says it's probing the controversial awarding of a doctorate to Grace Mugabe. The former First Lady received a doctorate from the University of Zimbabwe in 2014 amid allegations she did not study for it. Former President Robert Mugabe was Chancellor of the university. Now, for more perspective on the developments in Zimbabwe, Dewa Mahvinga, Southern Africa Director of Human Rights Watch, joins me live via Skype from Johannesburg, South Africa. Good evening, Dewa.
Good evening, Vincent. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. Now, President Mnangagwa promised to make changes in Zimbabwe, and people are very hopeful. Are you excited about what we're seeing, the crackdown on corruption?
Not quite, not really, and not yet, because what is happening appears to be retributive justice, where one particular faction, the losing ZANU-PF faction of the G40, is being targeted. So it is not a wholesome or comprehensive fight against corruption. It's not just about picking up former ministers and detaining them and then releasing them. It's about proper investigation and look to convictions. And so far there hasn't been any. We have had, very strange stories of former ministers being arrested for allegedly giving away television sets or being in possession of agricultural produce like sugar beans, or for wearing branded caps. So this is really not a serious, in my view, and comprehensive anti-corruption drive. It's more of a retributive agenda.
But again, this man who actually served with the then Vice President, Mnangagwa, what would you want to see him do? Is it that it would be more satisfactory if you got others who are not in that group of the G40?
Not only that, what is important is for Mnangagwa and his government to have a comprehensive approach that focuses more on thorough investigations that are across the political divide, that do not selectively apply the law to a small group, which is the vanquished G40 faction. So we also need to look at the more serious crimes of corruption on a grand scale. We have had cases of $15 billion US allegedly being siphoned from the diamond revenue. Those are the cases we are talking about, not cases where ministers are found in possession of, say, 30 bags of maize and they are arrested for that. We need proper investigations and a move away from this populist cameras approach to just, perhaps present people as being arrested, but without proper investigations.
We know that the other things that Zimbabweans were looking forward to is like to see the correction in the area of human rights, the respect for people's human rights, and expanding the space so people can express themselves. Do you see any progression in that area?
Not yet, and it's a disappointment because this is one area where Mnangagwa and his team could easily and quickly make progress by making the right pronouncements in terms of support for human rights. But there have been slow steps. We have had now in the last few days the signing into law of the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission Act. That is positive. But what we also want is a pronouncement that there will be accountability for past abuses, particularly those in which the military have been implicated. You will know that for the big human rights abuses in the past, including Kukuraundi in the 80s, or the political violence of 2008 elections, the military was heavily involved and at the center of those abuses. So we want to see Mnangagwa turn on the army and say they must be held accountable. And going forward, there will be respect for the rule of law and for due process of law. Because that's one thing that is missing here. What it appears that there is harassment of opponents and not due process of law.
Indeed, is on the spot now. We will be watching to see how it proceeds from here. Dewa, we want to thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you so much, Vincent.
That's Dewa Mahvinga, who is the Southern Africa Director for Human Rights Watch.